Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Clinic Gym Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Satterlee, and I'm joined today by Dr. Sean Drake. My man, Drake, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, brother. I actually made it on your podcast.
Yes. For those listening, I have scheduled, rescheduled, and rescheduled Sean multiple times because, as you will hear in this video or the audio interview, he's a real big deal.
Oh, my gosh. If you're listening to this, you know that this is – I don't even know how I made it on this podcast. Only the biggest of the biggest make it on this podcast.
Yep. Well, it's great to have you because I know that for those listening, Sean has seen almost every great part of the sports side of chiropractic that can be seen, from treating at do games and the Nitro Circus, all the way to teaching some other young chiros how to get in the world of sports, all the way to high-end evaluations and performance training. So I'm excited to dive in.
Cool. Me too, brother.
All right. So, Sean, let's give everybody a little backstory of how you went from a broke dumb dick down in Florida to the incredible man you are now.
Wow. That was harsh. But I guess
I want them to get the gravity of the transition that you've made. You know, you've literally pulled yourself out of the swamp. And here you are today.
Now you're knocking on my hometown in Florida. Love it. Thanks. Yeah. So as you guys can tell, Josh and I have a very good brotherly love going on. And, it's been awesome because you don't get to where you're at in life without a good tribe. That's the biggest thing. And, I've been blessed my whole life. I went to Florida State, where I walked on the track and field team. I was involved heavily in college there, and unfortunately had two major, car accidents in 4 years, which kind of prevented me from doing, some of the things that I really wanted to do. And, because of all that, I ended up finding chiropractic, and, I was developed ulcerative colitis. I had, all these other issues, frozen shoulder. And so within 2 years of my accident, that I was at, 22? I was on Azicol, Prednisone, Zoloft, Xanax, oxycodone. And it was a very interesting place to be in life, and not knowing, okay, well, now you can't go fly for, the Air Force, and you can't do this and you can't do that. It was like, well, what can I do with my life? And, ultimately got into, involved in politics, and that's when I met a chiropractor, and, they changed my life. And it was literally within like 3.5 weeks when I was told I'd never run again, and I'd never, be able to actually enjoy having a life, that my body started coming back to life. And I'm like, all right, that's what I want to do. And my family was against it. Friends of mine were like, what are you doing? You're crazy. you're getting ready to go to law school. You've got all these like future, plans ahead of you, and you're going to go to chiropractic college. And looking back on it, I can see, why it was such a weird situation for, somebody who had never really thought about going medical. And picking chiropractic. But what I can tell you is, in the time that I spent at Life University, just seeing the miracles that happen because of our awesome profession, and then going into the sports master's program, that's where it kind of changed for me. And, because of that, it opened up doors that no other opportunity would have, it might have come with a lot of hard work. But because of being at Life University when I was, and being involved in their master's program, and the connections and networking, that's really kind of what set the path apart from, where I would have been.
Yeah, I think I remember the day I decided to be a chiropractor too was many folks don't know this. My father died of brain cancer. And when he was getting treated, like, they throw every medication they can at you. And, all the doctors are trying to be helpful. They're just offering what they can. And he had tons of pain everywhere. And I was just impressed that his chiro kind of like thin sliced it, like, oh, so your shoulder hurts and your low back and your knee. Let's just treat those individually instead of taking this global approach of just narking you out and everything. And my dad said, I know I'm not going to be around in a year, so I don't want to be foggy. And so the drug, these painkillers just make me foggy. And so he's like, I'd rather go to the chiro. So we were going there 2 or 3 days a week. And I was just impressed. The guy got him out of pain, even if it lasted 24, 48, sometimes it'd last for weeks, Yeah. And I just appreciated that. And I think transitioning that aspect into sports, the most exciting thing about what we do in sports is you can change stuff right now in front of you with the tools you got. I mean, you're right now operating out of one of the most technologically advanced centers for sports in the world, but your treatment is basically a table and your hands and your brain, right? And that's enough for 99% of the problems you run into. Sure, there are like some supportive mechanisms, but the best of it is just like, it's all you need is a table, your hands, your brain, and a little bit of exercise equipment, and you can do amazing things.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the biggest thing right there, is that most chiros, when they get out of school, and if you're listening, please take this advice to heart, is you don't need a lot. And if you're graduating from a school that you feel didn't give you the right education, I mean, and I'm not saying this because we're involved with these groups, but I am saying this because I know it works, right? Like, I think the FMS and SFMA, if I'm a practicing chiropractor and I don't at least know what those are, I think you're missing something. I really do. And I don't care if you're a Thompson technique or you got CBP or your Pedibond.
I think it magnifies the effect of those things.
Yeah, it helps you out that much more. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I think, really knowing what drives you as a practicing doctor. I think that's the biggest thing that people get confused on, is that they go into practice based on an expectation of what they were told in clinic or by their business professor at their college. And, most people that go into chiropractic, they had a personal experience with chiropractic. What we're seeing now is that a lot of people are coming into chiropractic that have never even been adjusted. Mm. And so you've got these two different areas of life and, universes of people that are like, well, I got into chiropractic because I couldn't go to medical school and I didn't get into DO school. And I'm like, okay, great. But now what do you want to do with that? Like, I don't think a lot of chiropractors know the scope of practice that they really have if they want to use it. Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to what your brain is and what you can do with your hands.
Yeah. I think, Jimmy Ewan, who's one of the smartest guys I know, is an amazing chiropractor out in Phoenix. And he's one time said to me, no matter what school you go to, their job is to get you a license. And it's like getting a license to drive. Yeah. But having a driver's license doesn't mean you're a good driver. It just means you have the, base level of knowledge. But if you want to get really good, you go to like a professional driving school and then you become a good driver. I think that's very similar to what the FMS, SFMA, on-base, TP, all these skill sets of evaluation help you become, it's the driving school. It's making you better, even though everybody around you has the same license as you, much like drivers do, but that doesn't matter. That's not what you're going after. It's not a different license. So, and I think those things are so powerful that, one of the downsides of them is that they're such incredible tools that they can take someone with no license, no experience, no knowledge, and make them look like a pretty damn good poser.
Yeah.
Which can be dangerous in its own way. But let's dive more into the chiro side, because you've done, like the sports chiropractic on the side of sideline and providing care at like the X Games and extreme sports and USA Sevens rugby. What other events have you worked? Because you've been around, man.
Yeah, no, I've been blessed. There's not a sport that I haven't worked with. I think, when we look at the main ones, but when we really look at it, I've lived on both sides. So obviously like that emergency medicine, response side is pushed heavily in our chiropractic sports world. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's a skill set that is there that, if you want to do that, yeah, great. That's an opportunity. But the more and more that I got involved, I realized like our athletic trainers are so well trained for that, that like they're damn good at that. Like let them be good at that. Right. And sometimes I feel like, we tend to want to be the team doc, or we tend to want to go, to the Olympics, or we want to go work for a professional team. And I was guilty of this, so I can say all of it. You know what I mean? Like, I need to get that another certification because that's going to make me a better doctor, and that's going to open up another door, and that's going to open up another opportunity. And, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned from one of my mentors, Dr. Rose, is, why not just focus on your community? Every time that I stepped away for an event, like I lost money in my practice. Let's just put it into perspective financially, right? And, that's where he really switched my brain from that trying to be reactive sports chiropractic into this performance-based chiropractic, right? Mm-hmm. And not only that, but being sports specific, because a lot of the stuff that I've done that all over the world, like I had no clue about that sport when I originally got into it. And so whether, you know, especially when I got in, I did BMX, which that's why I got attracted to extreme sports. But, you know, when you start working with a sport and you don't understand the like mechanisms of movement, the reaction forces, like what causes injury, what prevents injury, how the team aspect really even works.
Or, I mean, I know you're working in baseball, like what's normal acceptable range of motion in baseball pitchers is so out of lines. If you don't, the first time you see it, if you don't know what you're expecting or that that's totally normal, you might freak out and say, oh, this person, you know, needs a surgical referral right now. It's like, no, they're actually the best pitcher in the world because of that. Exactly. And I think that comes down to owning your craft. You know, if you really want to be a good sports chiropractor, great, but you don't have, like, what blows me away is, as I always hear, it's like, man, I got to be really good at finding a meniscal tear. I've got to be really good at, like, you know, doing this. And I hope to gosh, if you're working with athletes or you're working with the general population, that you have that skill set to do that. Now, the other thing that I hope is that you have an assessment tool to check for like actual neurological, mechanical, and chemical performance in the athlete. Like that's really, as a sports chiropractor, that you should be able to do. You should have an assessment tool that you can assess an athlete and say, okay, are they functional? Are they neurologically functional? And if they're not, is it chemically affecting them? Is the chemical affecting them? Maybe like it could be inflammation. It could be some type of like disease. It could be some type of toxin. Or is it mechanical? And then if it's mechanical, can you tell the difference between joint and tissue? And then if not, is it neurological? Is it brain? Is it really pathology? Is it some type of other situation? And so we can't come at the world from one focus. So if you're evidence-based and you're pain-based, well, if that's all you're focusing on is the pain, you're not looking at function and you're not looking at like what's their blueprint of where they're at in their DNA, then you're leaving things on the table. But the other part of it too is being humble enough to say, you know what, I'm willing to refer this patient because I've got them as far as I can get them to go. That's what I really think makes a great sports chiropractor versus an okay chiropractor that's doing sports, is somebody who knows where their limits are and has a team around them. Yeah, I think one thing that I was surprised at to learn when I was a young chiro my first year is when you look at other industries, physical therapy and orthopedic sports medicine, and they refer, probably 40 to 50% of their patients, maybe more. And the chiropractors, I think, don't refer that often. I was shocked to learn how often people refer as they get better, not because they're not good enough. You know, and here I was holding on to things I really should have referred out quite a bit, but I don't want to volunteer too much information there because, you know, the statute of limitations may still be out. Yeah, but I think it's, but when you can admit that you're learning and that you've grown, like, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of stuff that I've done in my career that I'm like, crap, like I totally missed that. Or, you know what, like there's that athlete that you look back on and you're like, dude, I could have totally helped them. And I wish I would have known this. And it's just like when patients walk in our office sometimes, and I hear them say this to chiropractors all over the world. Why has no one told me this information? And I'm like, because they didn't know. It's not their fault. But now you know, and now you have a choice. Either you ignore it or you go fix it, or you work with it, right? Yep. Same thing as a practitioner. I'm hoping that people are stepping out of their comfort zone and being like the biggest thing that blows me away, and Josh, you see this too, is I get chiropractors that are like, I only do my online chiropractic education, or I go to my school's homecoming. That's all I do for continuing ed to knock my hours out. And I'm like, boring. I mean, like, have you ever gone outside of chiropractic for continuing education? Yeah. Have you ever gone like to a coaching conference to learn how coaches coach? If you love say you love a sport, let's pick a sport. Lacrosse. My kids are doing a lot of lacrosse right now. Yeah. So let's just say lacrosse for a second. I don't know a lot about lacrosse, but I'm learning a lot about lacrosse right now because I know that's a growing sport in the United States, number one. Number two, I'm asking lacrosse coaches if I can come to practice and look at the movements, look at the training, look at the drills. I'm looking at injury history. I'm looking at what are the most common injuries and why. Is it movement-based? Is it function-based? Is it trauma-based? Like, these are things, and not only that, but then you start to learn the language of what the coaches are speaking. You want to talk about getting referrals, start to learn the language of the sport. You know what I mean? I worked around a bunch of triathletes, and my business partner was a triathlete, and I was shocked by the words they use. And, you know, T1, what's your T1 time, your T2 time? what distance are you doing? Sprint, Oli, international, half iron, or just half, or full Ironman, or what do they say? 70.3 or 140.6.
Yeah.
Like they just throw around these terms, and, same in golf. If you don't know what fat or sculling it or, pushed it, or I'm trying to think of some other terms. I hit it too thin.
Over the top.
Yeah. You just start using that in conversation. If you can't keep up, they smell it on you pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you've done so well. In not only having like the joint gym practice side of things in the past, but having the ability to ask the questions. That's one of the things that I admire about you the most. No matter what we do, and whenever we're around people or I see you interact, is you genuinely ask questions and you listen. Sometimes you don't shut up, but you definitely listen. And that's a skill set I think a lot of chiropractors need to understand, is that we tend to talk more than we do listen. Like we tend to give our opinion versus hearing. And I think that especially in sports, that times are changing where the athlete is tired of being told what to do. They want to be heard. They have their dreams. They have their ideas. And the only person that should be caring about the athlete is the athlete. And if you're doctor focused and not patient focused, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think, the doctors out there in anything from surgery to acupuncture to sports psychology, the ones that can explain to the athlete what's going on or what the markers are or what to look for, they are they seem to keep people around the longest as patients. Yeah. And they're integrated into the teams, and they're taken to the Olympics or Pan Americans or whatever high level competition you're going to, because there's a mutual respect there. When the athlete knows what to look for, they also understand how great you are. But if they don't understand what to look for, a lot of times things seem so easy to somebody with a lot of education, like yourself, Sean. Like you can look at something and go, "Oh, I can tell." That's a guarantee. That's a G-mead, inhibited G-mead on the right.
Yeah.
And how did you do that? Well, you compared 87 facts against each other, but it doesn't look like it's that difficult. And so the athlete thinks, oh, well, it's not a big deal. And you're like, no, it's a huge deal in your sport. Like if you're a left-handed golfer, that's a massive deal. Mm-hmm. But their interpretation isn't, because some folks don't explain it as well. So I think explaining it's a huge deal, which is one of the reasons I think Dr. Greg Rose, and we're going to sound like a couple fanboys here, I'm sure, but one of the reasons I love talking with and hearing that guy speak is he is so great at explaining very complex things in a simple analogy. Typically, the guy's got 7,000 analogies in his pocket, and it's amazing. So I want to dive into some evaluation instead of having you blow smoke up my butt and I blow it back to you. But so you're currently based out of the Titleist Performance Institute in Oceanside. You're not necessarily working for them, but you're based out of there in your operations, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very unique situation. So I do work there. I do work with them, but I run our Racket Fit non-based university. Yep.
Yeah. So talk to me about like when you saw that high level evaluation that goes on there, mm-hmm. your first couple of weeks, and here you are transitioning out of the kind of sideline feel of things and going into that performance. But it's not just like, can we get you the right training program or can we get you the right yoga program? It's, you're running a lot of in-depth tests before anything is ever done.
Yeah.
Right. What was that shift like as you kind of went into that your first few weeks or few months?
Well, the good news is that I had enough time before I got here to really understand what it is that we do in our philosophy. And whether it's TPI, on-base U, or Racket Fit, I think it's important to understand before even the assessments what the philosophies are. Because a lot of people are like, man, that takes time. And I'm like, but if you understand the philosophy, you would take the time because you'll get the better result. And so, number one, I don't care if, you're swinging a golf club, a racket, a baseball bat, throwing a ball, or even living life. There's an infinite number of ways to do all of those things. But there's one efficient way for you to do it. It's based on what you can physically do. So that's number one philosophy. We don't care about style. We care about efficiency. Number two is obviously the joint by joint approach.
Hold on real quick. I just want to dive into that because I think we say that a lot and people don't understand the gravity if they haven't taken one of these courses. What we're saying is if your hip can only internally rotate 5 degrees, which ain't that uncommon, right? let's say you have a job where you sit for a living. Let's say you have a guy who's 48 years old and he's working as an attorney and he's pretty successful, but he's sitting on his butt for 10, 12 hours a day between his car ride and his desk and all that. If his hip starts tightening up and he can only turn 5 degrees, there is no way he's going to produce the same shot that Adam Scott, who might have 40 degrees of internal hip rotation, has, simply because the limits of the body are he's going to run into the limits of his body long before he can create whatever swing he wants.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's also, there's a lot of coaches out there, and doctors and strength coaches that try to tell people to do what they physically can't do because they've never checked. And that's where it leads into the second philosophy, is the joint by joint approach. And we don't need to define that on this podcast, but Gray Cook and Mike Boyle, like, they came up with a great way to look at the human body, reciprocal inhibition. So go look that up. And then number 3 is the team approach. Like, the reason that we do these tests, and again, I'm blessed with the time to be able to do a lot of these tests, but normally if I'm in full-time practice again, I've got a strength coach that's doing power testing. You know what I mean? I've got a coach that's recording the swings and doing all the video that I need them to do. I'm doing a basic SF. I'm doing my, detailed medical screen in the real world. At TPI, we're blessed because, let's say, and I'll give you a typical day. Like we had Team USA in last week for softball, and you were there too, Josh. So I appreciate you being there. But just to give you an idea is, we've got every girl goes through a on base U hitting screen or pitching screen based on what they're doing.
Or both.
Or both, depending. Then from there, we do video analysis. From there, we either do a 3D K-Vest or K-Motion for the hitters, or we do an AMM, 6D with the pitchers at the moment. From there, say we have a limitation within the on-base use screen. Now we've got a, physio, chiro, somebody who can break out SFMA, find out if it's joint tissue motor control. And then from there, we've got a strength coach doing the power numbers and power testing. And with all of this data and information, now we can take this and overlap it just like we would do with any type of situation in the real world and say, okay, you've got limitations blank. These are structural, these are functional. And now from a team approach, I can tell the coach, well, you're trying to get this, no wonder that the plane of the bat is off. Mm-hmm. No wonder that girl can't stay down. Mm-hmm. No wonder she can't get the velo you want because she can't load into the hip properly. She can't transfer energy. And so this is a really neat thing as a chiro, is because if there is a physical limitation and it's not congenital or it's not pathological, we really can change stuff fast. We can get in there like a bulldozer, clean up the area, get them moving right, now put them into a corrective exercise program and neurological reprogramming and reset. And all of a sudden you've got a girl or a guy who could miss out on their pro chance to all of a sudden be like, holy crap, my life is back or better.
And you're talking about working with Team USA. The difference, I mean, those women are going to go from their tour right now, and they're headed to the Olympics. With our fingers crossed, the Olympics are still going to occur on schedule this year. So far they are. But they're going to go ahead to the Olympics, and the difference between that gold medal and silver may be less than 1% of change, you know? And so you're really trying to take a diamond and polish it sometimes, which is what we were doing with that deep dive into it with Team USA. But as a practicing chiro, and most of the clients that come, the private clients, not the super high end racehorses that sometimes stop by, but the regular clients that stop by, a lot of them have never been evaluated at all. And you're not looking for a 0.025% chance or improvement. You're looking for 20% greater change in one day. And I think, going back, that's one of the things that's so exciting about what we can do as chiropractors, is create that change today.
Yeah.
But it comes on the back of evaluations.
Well, I think,
go ahead.
If I can interject, I don't tend to think of my average patient or my elite patient as separate patients. You know what I mean? And the reason I say that is that I don't care if you're Joe Schmo coming in from the local municipal golf course, or you're, let's just say Tom Pernice coming in. I'm going to evaluate you the exact same way that I would evaluate anybody else. because that's the system that I use. And you're a human being and I want you to perform. And what your limitation may be different. Now your goals are completely different, but that doesn't change my goal and how I look at you. And it shouldn't. I think that, a lot of times in practice, we tend to think of a high elite athlete or somebody who's a celebrity as a better patient than somebody who's just walking in my door being like, I need your help. And if you can change that mindset and look at everybody the same and say, and of course, don't get me wrong, like celebrities and working with professional athletes is fun because that gives you some credibility sometimes. Don't get me wrong. That's definitely a cool thing. But we forget about how amazing it is about what we do in our own community. And like, I'm telling you right now, if you get results with that guy who's like, if you and I are playing golf every week and all of a sudden I start kicking your ass, I'm going to ask, what are you doing different? Like if I'm married, which I'm not, but say I am, and my energy comes back after being married for 20 years. And and my wife says, what's different about you? Well, I'm just seeing Dr. Josh or Dr. Drake down the road and he's been working with me and all of a sudden, like I can move better. Well, then my brain's going to be better. My cerebellum's going to work better. My hormones are probably going to be better. My life's going to be better. And so what's cool about these assessments, whether it's TPI, On-Base U, Racket Fit, SFMA, FMS, is that you have objective testing pre and post that they get to see, that they physically get to see. It's no longer, oh, this is what I feel, or this is what I think is happening. You can show somebody if you're improving a deep squat. You can show somebody if they're improving single leg stance. You can show somebody if they are improving external rotation. You can show somebody if they're improving thorax rotation. Like these are the really cool factors because now it's a no bullshit type of thing. It's like, hey, you're getting better. And if you're not, I need to ask questions about, am I doing the right thing or do I need to bring somebody else in?
Yeah. I think the point I was trying to touch on is sometimes people think that because the person is not a pro that they don't need all this evaluation.
Yeah, that's true.
Man, people, when you share it with them, just the same stuff you share with the pros, or even do any sort of evaluation, oftentimes you find a huge elephant sitting there that nobody has ever addressed. And like you're saying, if they don't have any thorax rotation and then you give it to them, their mind's blown. For example, I've had a guy, he had back pain, couldn't touch his toes. 3 visits in, no back pain and could touch his toes. He like stands up, gets a huge smile on his face, throws his phone to me and goes, hey, you got to take a picture of this for my wife. Like, she's not going to believe this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, like you forget how much change you can create with our skill set. So it's awesome. I don't want to go on too much farther without talking about what you've put together with On-Base and Racket Fit and the amazing work you guys are doing there. So for those who don't know, can you kind of bring them up to speed let's stick to On-Base real quick because that's the easiest to think about. And I think more people understand baseball than tennis, but what is the On-Base, what is On-Base University all about?
Well, we can talk about both of them in a very unique way too, because we can counter, we can save time. I think the big thing is that look at it as sport specific assessment and language.
Okay.
Whether it's On-Base U, Racket Fit, obviously a lot of people know about TPI with golf. But the cool thing about On-Base U right now is that, we've consulted with 19 of the MLB teams. They've adopted our systems to where their strength coach, their medical, their fitness, and their coaches have all done this. And whether you go through any of these courses, the first thing that you're going to learn is language. You're going to learn the sport. You're going to learn the movement of the sport, things that we think are physically causing that type of either inhibitor, characteristic, or problem. What we say is that movement screening doesn't tell you what they do. It just explains why they might be doing it, right? Mm-hmm. So when we look at an on-base hitter, that's for pitching and for softball and baseball. Mm-hmm. Like we really feel that the hitting is the hitting. And, we have some of the best advisors in the world. And if you want to go to our website, you can look at that. But then in the pitching, we've got obviously baseball pitching. Now we have fast pitch softball pitching coming out in the fall. And so, as somebody who's taken that education, now you get to learn, one, the movement of the sport. You get to learn, okay, are there asymmetries that are important? Are there symmetries that are important? I think these are really big things from chiropractic.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought that I think some people forget, that some asymmetries are great.
Yeah. And I love how Greg explains this. And it's not the fact of fanboy or anything else. This is a personal mentor who's affected us and helped us get results to get where we're at. So it's always important to know where these lessons have come from. Mm-hmm. And, he always says when you're looking at, the patient or you're looking at the sport, that as long as you can stay in your lane, you're going to be best off no matter what. The coach is always the driver of the car. And I'm sure that you've had the analogy of the car in the past, so I don't want to jump on that. But being a medical person that understands language and understands how to get results of sport specific, you will have a closed practice. I promise you. You will not need to market as much as you think you need to market, but you got to get focused and hyper focused on what your passions are. Like, don't go work with a sport if you don't want to work with that sport, because you're not going to enjoy it. And don't do it just to make money.
Well, so talk about that a little bit. Like, tell us this, have you seen anybody chase a sport that they really had no desire for, or the opposite, somebody that found in the one, because I know you have some friends, across the country that are wildly in love with what they do every single day. And I don't think you see that all the time in chiropractic.
No, I don't. I think a lot of people tend to do what pays because it pays. They don't do what they do because of what they love. And, I can tell you right now, like, there are certain sports that I just don't enjoy. And I'm not going to put myself around it, even though it can make me a lot of money, because I don't thoroughly enjoy it. And so let's just say golf, for instance, right? I love it, but I have friends of mine that, because I'm involved with TPI, they went and took TPI. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I can start going after golfers. But they do not like golf. They don't play golf themselves. And so that makes them not want to learn more about golf. And I'm telling you right now, golfers are fanatics. Tennis players are fanatics. If you're not up to date on who played in the tennis tournament, I'm telling you right now that's gonna be a communication problem with your patient, because they're gonna be coming in. They're gonna be like, dude, did you see Nadal, and did you play Federer and Djokovic, and did you see this new guy coming up? And you're like, yeah, no, I didn't. I was out bass fishing this weekend. It's like, there's a disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where education is so important. Like, there are things everywhere. And right now, and we're doing this podcast during the quarantine. And so, there's a ton of education that you could be doing as a practicing chiropractor from your computer on what you love. And I tell you what, if it's not there, create it.
Hey, are you looking for the best exercise equipment available? Well, I think that you got to check out Perform Better. PerformBetter.com is a huge supporter of everything that is the Clinic Gym Hybrid. They are actually one of the biggest supporters of the FMS and the SFMA program. And I can't say enough great things about their 3-day summit. So if you're interested in some education, every summer, they do their 3-day summits in Orlando, Chicago, Providence, and Long Beach. Long Beach is my favorite. That's where I go. But the speakers there will absolutely blow your mind. So check out PerformBetter.com, whether you need bands, mini bands, equipment, flooring, or their 3D design capabilities. I think it's fantastic stuff. So check out PerformBetter.com. You're saying for your patients, like, talk to them all about let's say you're working in tennis, going over the 4 best stretches for your shoulder before your serve or something like that.
Yeah. Or here's how you can actually use Tai Chi with tennis inside your house right now.
Yeah.
Slow it down. Like, here's things that you can do practically. Like, this is, sports chiropractors all the time. It's always funny because I see posts about, let me tell you how to fix an ankle injury. Let me tell you how to look at, if you got a fracture, let me show you how to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, how about this? Let me see if you can even do a deep squat real quick. Let me show you the difference between a wall squat that we do in tennis versus a deep squat that we may do in baseball. Let me correlate why that's different. Now, can you do that? If you can't, it may be your ankle, your hip, it may be something else. And let me give you some things while you're quarantined. Like, more of us have got to produce content that people can feel when they're at home, so that they can trust you. So that way, when they come in your practice, that one, you've already got that lead that's a positive. Mm-hmm. Number 2, they've already seen that you can make a difference without ever even touching them. And now when you do a detailed assessment and you show them how much more you can do, I mean, dude, you got a patient for life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you got measurable improvements that they can use, and they want to come back to you for more of, oh, that was amazing. What other tricks do you have up your sleeve?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with staying in your lane, because I know that comes up a lot. A lot of folks think, oh, I'm the best in my town at whatever, whether it's, I got a lot of people who own gyms as well. And so there's this thought that they're also the best trainer in their area. Mm-hmm. And some of them very well may be, especially if you're in a small town. But maybe can you talk about, I know like Don Slott's an advisor for On Base and one of the lead instructors, right?
Yeah.
And can you talk about your experience of what he can see in a swing off of like 30 seconds of video that you can't? Because I mean, that's what I was blown away with, is he just kind of glances at a swing and he can knock off 7 things that I would need 30 minutes of video review and a V1 app to draw lines and circles on somebody.
Well, that's just because you're slow. But no,
that is true.
No, I think it goes down to, it's the same thing with us. Like if you and I put somebody through a top tier, you know, we're already able to break out in our heads, okay, what breakouts do we need to do within the SFMA, right? Mm-hmm. Or if I see a certain movement pattern based on what sport I'm looking at, you and I can jump to conclusions pretty quickly on what we want to assess. And it would take him forever to do that. So from the coaching perspective, like I just need to know, okay, are they, you know, is it a barrel? Are they swaying? You know, are there certain things that are happening? And if it is, then I'm going to talk to my coaches. I'm going to be like, hey, are you seeing this? Mm-hmm. And Don is like one of the best, obviously, being a good coach. But that's why I surround myself with the best in my community. Like if I was to open, let's say I'm opening another practice right now, for those that are listening that have a practice, the number one thing I would do is I'm going to find out, what am I really good at? What are my passions? I'm going to literally write down, I'm going to go through Google Maps. I'm going to type in exactly who I want to work with. I'm going to call every single one of those people. I'm going to go by their business. I'm going to go knock on the door. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to hand a card and ask them how I can help them, not what they can do for me. Then number 3 is I'm going to host a night on each one of those things that I love. I'm going to host a night on baseball. I'm going to host a night on softball. I'm going to host a night on tennis. I'm going to host a night on golf. Why? Because those are 4 things that I'm really good at that I love to do, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see like elderly people that are broken. I don't want to see young kids who have like, you know, learning disabilities. Friends of mine love that. I want to refer that to them. Like, so I'm going to go obviously build that tribe within my community. Yeah. And then I'm going to go to the coaches and I'm going to be like, hey, who are the best coaches? I'm going to get them together. I'm going to ask them their opinion. I'm going to ask them to be advisory board members to my practice. And then from there, if I ever do have a question, same thing. I'm asking like, hey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's so huge, like putting together that advisory board. Like, who are the people that, you know, you can get on your side of the fence, and once you do, there's really no competition in town, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy when you do that. If you get the top 3 coaches, I mean, I'm in a city of, let's say 2 million, and I bet if I had the top 3 baseball coaches, you know, in my area, on my team, my extended team, or on my advisory board, how can anybody compete with that? I mean, like, you know, if I just say, hey, this program is not something I designed, it's something that, you know, I brought to these 3 guys and they said, yeah, you need to change this and that and this, but otherwise it's a good program. So they have a piece of it too. And they have that belief in it and ownership that they helped establish. I think if you're a young chiro out there listening, man, who are the people that if they were behind you, you could not lose in your city? Like, is there an orthopedic surgeon who just is the you know, if you were down in Birmingham, Alabama, you got to get Jim Andrews on your team. Like, because if he says it sucks, you suck. You know, you're never going to fight that way. But if he says you're good, then you probably get 30 PTs that believe in your stuff right away because Dr. Andrews said it. You know, if you're working in the world of golf and you can get Greg Rose to say your stuff's awesome, that's it. It's awesome. You know, or Butch Harmon or Cameron, what's Spieth's coach's name? Cameron. I can't remember Cameron's last name, but you know, if he says you're good and you're good, like that's all it is. But then they can also show you the way, like, hey, you're missing this huge part here, which is one thing I think like a guy like Don would share with me is, hey, this is all great, but you're missing this huge component here that you may not have considered because you don't know the game as well as I do.
Yeah. And I think the other part too is like, if you're a young chiro or you're a person in practice listening to this, don't go try to live off affirmation from other professionals though. Like the best thing is get better results in your practice. Like don't get me wrong, the networking is humongous. And if you can get that, that's great. But you're going to have a lot of people that don't believe in what you do because they don't know what you do. And so no matter what, I think when you're in practice, you have to have a system of results. You have to have a system that you can go to every single time that says whether, and you have objective findings, not just subjective, but objective findings that show improvement. That's what makes patients talk. And video works. I'm telling you right now, if you're not videoing your patients pre and post, like you're leaving a lot on the table. Because I'm telling you, in today's visual world, especially in quarantine, if you had video testimonials right now in practice, or you had patients that you had videos of that you did, they could be posting that. You could be like mentoring them through this time and doing pre and post video with that. And so it's becoming more and more of a thing. I understand HIPAA, but if you can get them to sign a release and they're okay with sharing, I mean, dude, pictures used to say 1 million words. Video says 1 billion words.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah. So Sean, as we're kind of going long here, but I'm enjoying this quite a bit. What's off in the future, you think, as far as private practice and whatnot?
Yeah, I think the biggest future of private practice is multi-doctor practices. I think number one, specialization practices, where
multiple doctors maybe of different disciplines, but
it could be different disciplines or same passion. They just want to drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would not want to be in an island by myself in practice anymore. There's too much that I want to do in life. I want to have a family. I want to have kids. Mm-hmm. And if like you and I were in practice together and you wanted to take a week off with your family, I've got the practice covered. You know what I mean? I can cover your patients, like, and vice versa. Cost is going up right now. Students are coming out with student loans that are higher than I've ever seen before. I've got, one kid that's over $400,000 in debt already, and he's just coming out of chiropractic college.
No.
Think about that. So keeping costs down is another thing, right? And then, I think the future of practice is it's going to be community driven. Like, people always say, like, oh, get involved in the chamber, do this, but no, you really have to. You got to be community involved. You can't just sit and wait on, leads and wait on this like drop click marketing. Like, that's great. Don't get me wrong. That's going to drive people in, but you are still you. Like, personal contact is so important. Mm-hmm. Giving back is important. Mm-hmm. Like, you can think that I'm a philosophical weirdo. I went to life, but I love their give to love to serve to do. Those 4 things, if you give and you love and you serve and do, like, you will be successful.
To your point, and I try and disagree with you as often as I can, but I'll support you this one time. There's a software out there called ClickFunnels. I'm sure you've heard of it. Like, yeah. And the founder of it says his number one approach to business is to, when he has a new product or a new offering he wants, is he writes out what he calls his Dream 100, and it's the 100 people that he would want to fall in love with his program, to talk about it, do podcasts about it, to do interviews about it, to use it, support it, have it at their conference. And it goes back to, here's a guy that has an unlimited knowledge of how to build online stuff, an unlimited knowledge of how to buy ads on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. And he's still coming back to the first step in all of marketing is to draw out those 100 people that, can be your biggest fans. And if you get them, all that other stuff works. But man, if you don't get that group of people, there's a real good chance that nothing will work. You could look at, what's his name? Your boy. Bloomberg. Yeah. Mike Bloomberg, your homie.
Oh, my homie. Ha-ha.
Yeah, that's right. Sean worked for the RNC for a while, so I'd like to
thanks to throw that on the podcast. Yep.
Yeah. But
he was part of the RNC.
There was a guy that had unlimited amount of money, right? Yep. Threw money around like it was free, and still could not gain any traction. It wasn't like he wasn't even close to the lead. Whereas, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden had really gone out and shook hands and talked to people and went to communities and whatnot. And even if you disagree with their politics, there's no way to overcome the need to meet with people and talk with people, And their approach was much like what you're saying about what can I do for you? Yeah. Rather than, than telling them, hey, here's my business card, you should vote for me, right? Now, whether they were genuine about that, I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, when you go around a community and shake hands and go to all the events, people want to connect with people no matter what the business is.
Yeah, well, I think that goes down to in that scenario as well, is that you look at Joe and Sanders, they've been around for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. So they've had a lot of that personal contact. For you that are just getting ready to join practice, you're not going to have that history, right? And those of you that are in practice and have been in practice for a long time, maybe you've lost touch of that, right?
Yeah.
So your name is known in the community, but maybe you haven't been involved in a while. Maybe you dropped out of Rotary or Interact, or maybe or Rotary or Lions Club or Kiwanis, and maybe you've dropped out of the Masonic Lodge, or maybe you've dropped because of family. Life, the seasons of life change, right?
Life goes through seasons, man. Yeah.
When we're opening a practice for the first time, we're excited. We got the energy. We're going to get involved in everything.
Yeah.
Then you meet a girl or a guy and you fall in love. And like all of a sudden it's like, well, now we have a kid or we have a dog, and like you want to change that. So I think time management is important with a practice as well. Like, me, hi, I'm Sean. I'm a workaholic. It's who I am. I love it. Like this is my lifestyle. Like people are like, oh man, you work every day. I'm like, dude, I live every day. You work 9 to 5 Monday through Wednesday or Monday through Thursday. So you have a weekend. I think that, if you're a young chiro or you're a chiro in practice, this would be the encouragement. Is there any certifications out there that you can go take that would bring a passion back to you or drive a new passion? Would be number one, and go do it. Just say, you know what? I'm going to put $2,000 towards continuing education this year. Like everyone needs to invest in themselves. I don't care who you are and what you do. Number two, is there an organization or an opportunity that you can give back to your community that will either A, drive the passion you have or give you a new passion? Notice how everything has to drive a passion or bring a new one out in you. And if there is, say yes and get involved. And number three, we need to take better care of ourselves as doctors. A lot of us, the biggest thing that I see when patients and not patients, but clients come to TPI, Racket Fit, or On Base is they're like, holy crap, I didn't know my body was as bad as it is. And if we're movement professionals and we're truly neurological healthcare professionals, then we had better be moving right, thinking right, eating right, being right. And if we're not, are we putting the right tribe around us to make sure they hold us accountable to be the best that we can be?
Yeah, if anybody's listening, been to a TPI, an On Base, a Racket Fit, SFMA, FMS seminar, you know that the PowerPoint presentation is full of wild dysfunction, and 90% of that comes from the people in the classes that we've taught. We film somebody that's really bad and go, oh, here's Sean Drake that we saw, we met him up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And look at this. He has no pronation of his right forearm. And it's like, whoa. And it's like, yeah. And this dude's a physical therapist practicing every day, or, doing side posture adjusting on patients as a chiropractor, and he loves tennis. And you're like, it should be impossible for him to play tennis. It's like, yeah, he gets through.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
So, those are big things. And I think the other thing too, Josh, is, writing down what you want. Like, I think so many chiropractors don't have their 5-year plan done.
5 year
or 1 year, right?
5 months.
They don't even have 5 days. I think, dude, this is what this situation is showing people. Like, people were not prepared. Like, just to give you an idea, man, I've had calls from people that have had to lay off like 3 and 4 PTs, all their associates in chiro, because they physically didn't have the funds to cover an emergency situation.
Yeah.
Like, this is a scary time. And I think that, this will be a wake-up call. And when all this quarantine's over, like, the world needs chiropractors. People are stressed out. They're not moving. Like, we're going to be needed more than ever. So I hope that people take this time to really learn something, to get better at their craft, re-go over what they do, why they do it, and come back to practice with an excitement and a drive to want to change this world.
Yeah. I think when you're saying like what continuing ed, like what is something that, so my wife right now is just discovering DNS, and she's like, went to a seminar last weekend and just absolutely got smoked in it, but she's super interested in it. And she would do, at this point in her life, she would work with patients on that every day, 12 hours a day, and never worry about getting paid. You know, and there's somebody out there, I've talked to some folks that are so into baseball or I can't remember his name, Rob, our friend from Kansas City that's into tennis, and took the Racket Fit, and he'd work with tennis players till his hands bled. Like, he just loves that, and I think that's so important. Your buddy Ryan that is a baseball player up in Spokane, right? Like, he'd work with baseball all day, every day. And you're right. That is so great, because you are able to help those people so much more when they come into your practice. So yeah, it's exciting to me, all the opportunity that's out there. And I'm excited about the ability to provide more assessments. That's what really gets my motor going right now, is like what we did with Team USA softball is that stuff is going to become more and more exciting. And you look at how many kids, I don't know, 20 years ago were fit for custom clubs before they graduated high school in golf. And now I don't know, at least at our local high school, which is pretty, rich area, but I don't think there's a kid playing on the high school golf team that has not been custom fit for clubs.
Yeah.
And you look at the rackets and in tennis, and you look at, I'm sure when you started running track when you were in high school, it was like you used the same shoes you walked around school in, right?
No, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Thanks for crapping on my point.
No, I'm with you though.
Yeah.
The bats and everything, right? It's behind, and technology is changing, which means the sport's changing, which means we have to evolve.
Yeah. I think that's a huge opportunity, and certainly one I want to pursue is looking at the evaluation side and looking how that meeting of what they call sports science with the hands-on chiropractic. That's where I think the sweet spot is right now.
Yeah. And I think if, you're a chiro out there listening, or a physio, or it doesn't matter what you are, if you want to learn more about this, I mean, Josh and I are definitely available to talk about it. Keep your eyes open. We're going to be launching something pretty cool together. It's coming out hopefully in the next month or two, but we want to see you be successful in this realm. And if whatever your passion is, I want to see you happy. And I see too many chiros that are stressed out paycheck to paycheck, not knowing what they're going to do, not knowing why they're doing it. And
maybe 10% of their patients are the ones they actually want. Yeah. So it's not just paycheck to paycheck. It's that their batteries are empty too,
Yeah. So, let's all take this time to rest. Let's take this time to reevaluate who we are and what we are and why we're doing it. And let's kick ass in 2020 and beyond, man.
Yeah. 2021 is going to be the year, baby. So already be fully recharged and
or dead.
Yeah. But hopefully they're using this time to get in some long walks and listen to some classical music while they do it, All right, Sean. Well, I think we covered about every subject that's needed to save the world. So I think we're in good shape.
Love it, buddy.
Yeah. So Sean, if people want to reach out to you about On Base, Racket Fit, or they want to do some evaluations of local athletes, how can they find you?
Yeah. So you can Instagram Dr. Sean Drake, Facebook Sean Drake or Dr. Sean Drake.
And it's Sean spelled SEAN, and the last name is Drake, just like it sounds.
Yep, Drake. And then if you want to reach out to me on my TPI email, it's Sean, SEAN.Drake @mytpi.com. That's Sean.Drake @onbaseu.com, and then Sean.Drake @rackfit.com. Yeah. So, and the cool thing is we've got, we're reprocessing all the chiropractic credits again. So TPI should be back on with the chiro credits here soon. Online's live with our baseball and tennis. So if you're home right now and you want to take some online courses, you can go do that as well. But yeah, man. Yeah,
they can knock that out and then participate in a live course once travel is not restricted anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. All right. Well, on behalf of Dr. Sean Drake, this is Dr. Josh Satterlee saying, follow Sean's advice. Go out there, maximize your license, and live the life you dream of. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, brother.
Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there, here, or anywhere to get more videos just like this. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you soon.